my brother was in university, I couldn't see where I was going to get the money to get to university, to be quite honest. But just then, the government started this thing up to be a licensed mechanic. So I ended up there, and I got the magnificent total of $9 a week. $6 went for board. And so you had the magnificent total of $3 to buy beer, which was only 10 cents a glass, so that was fine. Yeah, that was an interesting, 4 or 5 months. But from there, it was a direct entry into the Air Force. That would be in 1940, by the 39-40. And from going into the direct entry of the Air Force, they sent me down to Toronto to get all the shots, and believe me, I got lots of them. Then they sent me down to Trenton, where I was working on, well, basically, I suppose it's where you learn how to drill and stuff according to their rules and regulations. And from there, they sent me out west to Calgary as a mechanic. Yeah, I was an airframe mechanic at this time. Magnificent rate of an AC2C, promoted eventually to a corporal. Hey, I'm a corporal. Hey, so we go from there. They lowered the regulations. If you wanted to be a gunner or something like that, you could get in with a high school education. The WDs, the women's division, was formed in the Air Force. So I put in an application to re-muster to be a pilot. So it finally came through. So from there, they sent me up to Calgary, Edmonton, for schooling, where I had to take navigation and WT and all the rest of it, where I learned to operate the machine at about 12 words a minute. I'm a hell of a poor speller, by the way, so this is what kind of slowed me down there. But from there, they sent me back down to High River, Alberta, to fly Tiger Moths. If you couldn't go solo within 8 hours of that, they washed you out. Fortunately, I managed to survive 8 hours, and I'm solo daytime. Now I got to take night flying. This is where it got interesting. Ab Horn, who was from Hamilton, by the way, was my instructor. When we take off with this Tiger Moth, with me flying it, we come in, we didn't hit the ground, we ricocheted about 30 feet into the air. It was a hell of a bounce. It was at night. He said, now that we know where the Earth is, let's land on it. Then they sent me to McLeod, Alberta, to fly Ansons. So I'm flying Ansons, twin-engine Ansons. The thing that happened there, which was of interest, was it ended up 2 trainees, one a pilot, the other's a navigator, and switching back and forth. One time you're a navigator, and one time you're the pilot. And you do a circuit or whatever you're doing it. And if you get lost, you go down to the railway stations and read where the hell you are so you can get back to where your base was. Doc Roy and I, he was from Alberta, but we got lost. So we go down, I'm flying at this time, so we go down to catch the name of where we are, and I'm about 500 feet going across. Of course, he didn't get it. It was too high. So I come back around. This time I'm about maybe 50 to 100 feet off the deck when we go by. I said, did you get the name of the place? He said, yeah. And he said, if you're really interested, the station master's having pink ice cream for lunch. Oh, dear. But these are the funny things you remember. Flying the Ansons, and it was midwinter, 40 below sort of thing. They wheeled this thing out of the hangar We started up because it's warm. We were the only ones to get off that day, flying Ansons. Flying around the prairies out there was pretty monotonous at best of times. Wild horses, Ab Horn again, he was flying the damn thing. He was sitting in the right-hand seat, but he was flying it. Started to chase these damned horses. It's great to see these horses galloping like hell across the prairies, in the middle of winter. So as we're coming around, we see this damned Indian standing on the trunk of a tree. It had been cut off maybe about 6 feet from the ground or something, and he was standing on top of it, waving his hands. Oh, this is great. He turns around and comes around and looking him right in the face. He pulls it back on the stick and the guy disappears. Bang. I thought, oh shit, we hit the guy with a tailplane. I really did. I almost figured the tailplane had nailed that Indian standing on a... So we come around. Here's the same damned Indian standing on the same trunk of a tree, waving a piece of plywood about 6 by 4. It was the bottom of our airplane. So I said, what the hell are you going to say now? He says, we lost an engine. We'd never lost a bloody engine. But he said if we were going to fly on one engine, this is what happened. I said, well, the only thing you can do is hope that Indian doesn't come into town with that bottom half of the wing waving it. And right after that, of course, I finally graduated and they sent me down to Halifax to get on a boat to go over to England. A normal 2-passenger cabin, there was at least 12 of us in there, stacked up, top of it. And of course they holler for boat drill. That meant you had to get out of the cabin and stand by the boats and all the rest of it. So the horn blows and everybody's supposed to rush out. Hey, it's cold outside, so somebody turns off the light and we all go back to sleep. That's when the ship's warrant officer comes in and raising, hey, what are you doing? Why aren't you out? And by this time, he's in the cabin and he's looking at everybody sleeping there. This American, I don't know what the hell I think he was a Texan or a Kentuckian or something, who'd come up and joined the Canadian forces. And of course, because he's on the top bunk, all he's got to do is turn his face and he's looking the warrant officer right in the face. And he says, you're supposed to be out on deck. And he went on and he says, Mr. Warrant Officer, he said, how many men you got on board this boat? 5,000? Well, as a matter of fact, it's 6,132. Oh, yeah. He says, we don't stand a snowball's chance in the hell of making that boat. He says, shut the door, it's cold in here. Oh, God. We got ship's police for the rest of the voyage. But then we ended up in Bournemouth. It's a holding unit for everybody, eh? I don't know how many people were on board in that place, but the place where you had dinner and stuff like that, breakfast, dinner, or whatever, was a bowling green, and they had a clubhouse, and they'd taken it over for feeding and all the rest of it. Oh, hell, you hear the sirens going off all the time, but so what? I'm sitting there from here to there with a table between us, an alleyway running down here when the sirens go off. So what? This was at lunchtime because what they used to do is they'd march you out of town and then turn you loose just to get you out of the road sort of thing. There's so many there. So the sirens had gone off. When the first bomb hit, I figure it took me at least a half a second to get under the table. At least a half a second. And when I got there, Doc Roy was already there, and he said, "What kept you?" And even then I couldn't resist it. I says, "I was looking for your tan." He was as white as a sheet. And so was I, of course. 20mm cannon shells running down about that far away from where the hell I'm sitting. I said, "This is no place for a good Canadian to be," and I got up and ran like hell for the side of the building. The whole damn mess hall followed us in there. It was crowded. So after that, they sent me out anyway, to go flying airspeed Oxfords around the country to get used to the flying around England and that. They call it an airspeed Oxford. It was the same version as a Anson sort of thing. And then from there, they sent me over to the Isle of Man to fly all the navigators around, to teach them how to navigate around the Irish Sea. Next thing I know, I'm up for a commission. And I got interviewed by the British Air Force and stuff. Because I knew how to swear the right way and stuff, I ended up getting commissioned. So of course, once you get commissioned, you can't stay on the same station. They gotta move you. So from there, they moved me over back to Scotland, Dumfries. That's where I met my wife, Eileen. She was in the ATS at that time. She was driving an ATS, but she was also working in the, parachute manufacturing place. I don't know. It's not, that isn't the right word for it. I don't know what it is now. But anyway, yeah, I probably met her at a dance hall. I mean, it's the same as everything else, but I mean, we ended up getting married, and from Dumfries, I went down to the center part of England. That's where I learned to fly in Halifax. That was a 4-engine job with air-cooled engines, yeah. I transferred from the Halifax to Lancasters. And I'll tell you what that consisted of, the conversion. One trip around and land at daytime, one trip around and land at nighttime, you're on your own. The difference in those times as there is now, there was never two pilots. There was only one pilot. They just didn't have that many that you could afford to have a co-pilot. So I promptly taught my bomb aimer how to arrive and smash it on the ground if we had to, you know. I mean, 2 gunners, a bomb aimer, a navigator, an engineer, and a pilot. And then as you got on the bigger, more airplanes, you're carrying 7 and 8. Yeah, they started to bring these bomb aimers in. I mean, and that was kind of interesting because you get on a course and you're heading in for the target. He's down there taking control, sort of thing, telling you which way he wants to go. Oh, and coming back that was kind of interesting. They didn't have all these lights and stuff. What they used to do was run a trench down either side of the runway, put a match to it after they filled it with coal oil or whatever. So there was a flare all the way down, I think.
Oh, that's what you had to land on.
That was your night.
Between it, not on it.
Yeah.
Took them 13 seconds to load it up, fire it, and get it up to where you were. Now, have you ever done any hunting? Okay, you know the way you have to lead so the shell and the thing arrive at the same time, eh? The boffins, the smart guys in command, figure out, okay, if it takes 13 seconds to do this, if you change your height, direction, and airspeed, you're going to have difficulty. Hopefully you were someplace where the other thing was going to hit. But the Germans got smart. You didn't have to get hit. They were called proximity fuses. They just get close to you and explode. At the end of the war, I was still flying Lancasters. By this time, they'd I've been on several different types. I think I've been on about 17 different types of airplanes that I've been checked out on. Bringing back the desert troopers. The war was over in there, but they were in Italy at this time, and I was landing just outside of Naples, picking up 26 or 28 of these guys and flying them back to Britain. Oh yeah, I got home in 46.
Okay.
And I got out and I went to work for DeFasco. Somewhere along the line I learned how to weld. Yeah. So I was a welder down there for about 2 or 3 years, long enough to get into their profit-sharing business. And by this time, I was talking to Eileen. I said, "What do you think about me going back in the Air Force?" They had invited me back. I was still flying Chipmunks. I was flying them once a month or so, and I was still current. And they promptly sent me back out to Calgary to get checked out again on Harvards. The Illinois Harvard, they checked me out on that, and they checked me out on the Beechcraft, the Expediter, and then they sent me back down to the East Coast to again get back to flying Lancasters again. And that's when I got sent up to Resolute Bay to do that ice patrol up there. Yeah. French-Canadian captain on board one of the ships. I told him that it was clear sailing if he went 20 or 30 miles out to sea. He could sail all the way up to the north without worrying about going through the ice. But not him. He stayed in close to shore and plowed his way through the ice up there. So I met him in the mess hall later on. I said, "Hey, why didn't you go a little further out?" He said, "I've been 30 years in the ice and I'm going to make it 31. Yeah, and after that, they sent me out right out to the West Coast to be on the island, Vancouver Island. I started to get a psyche about that because I was on the Isle of Man, Vancouver Island, Prince Edward Island. Yeah, I wonder what the hell they're doing with me, putting me on an island all the time. I mean, I was instructing on the off the PEI, teaching people how to fly the Lancaster, of course. And then after that, it's when they put me in maritime headquarters. The message comes through, you now are in charge of a submarine patrol that's working the St. Lawrence River and up and down there, stopping the Russians from supplying Cuba with all these missiles. Yeah. So this is when I got the word that we have submarines up there and you're in charge of them, What the hell do I do with a submarine, But anyway, I turned to the LAC, who'd been there forever. I said, "Do you know the code numbers of all these people?" "Oh, yeah." He said, "I got them all." I said, "Send them all a message and tell them to keep on doing what they're doing." No, the only time I was on board a submarine is when I was invited by the sub captain to come down to his cabin to have a drink. Now, when I say his cabin, the three of us, if we got in there, it was one too many. I mean, there was just no room. I came back, and I was back in the Air Force, and as I said, 46 to 56, I guess it was. No, I didn't get out till 65, and that's when I came back to Hamilton. But when when my wife agreed for me to go back in the Air Force, I was more than happy because I don't give a damn. There's nothing more boring than going to work for 8 hours a day.
So you lived in a household with 6 or 7 women?
Man, you're looking at a hero.
Well, I was about to ask you, what was more dangerous? Flying a Lancaster or living with 6 women?